It all began with a single vibration, a phone lighting up in the middle of the night. No one in that quiet city could have imagined that one text message would ripple through every street, every family, and every circle of friends. The words on that screen carried a weight so heavy it didn't just affect the people involved, it became the talk of the entire city. A secret exposed, a truth that was never meant to come out, all packed into a handful of characters. What could a single message possibly contain that was powerful enough to shatter lives, end relationships, and even draw the attention of law enforcement? Tonight, we uncover the story behind the text that shocked an entire community. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll realize just how fragile trust really is. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more daily stories that will leave you speechless. The night it all started, Sarah was alone at home, scrolling through her phone after another long day. Her husband Daniel was away on what he had said was a business trip. He had been distant for weeks, brushing off questions and giving vague answers. But Sarah trusted him, or at least she wanted to. That trust crumbled in an instant when her phone buzzed with an anonymous message. No name, no warning, just a screenshot attached. A screenshot that would rip open her world. Her hand shook as she opened it. On the screen, Daniel's words appeared clear as day, sent to someone who was definitely not her. Words of love, words of promises, words that weren't meant for a wife waiting at home. At first, Sarah thought it had to be some mistake. Maybe someone faked it. Maybe it wasn't real. But deep down, her heart knew. It wasn't just a casual message. It was proof of something darker, something hidden. What she didn't realize was that this wasn't just between her and Daniel. The person who sent her that screenshot didn't do it quietly. They had already shared it, passed it around, and in a matter of hours, it spread beyond Sarah's phone. Friends, neighbors, even strangers were whispering about the man everyone thought was respectable, loyal, and untouchable. By the time Daniel returned, the city was already buzzing. He walked into his home, completely unaware that his secret had already gone public. Sarah stood waiting, phone in hand, eyes filled with pain and fire. She didn't have to scream. She didn't have to ask questions. She simply held up the phone, the message glaring back at him. Daniel's face went pale, and in that silence, Sarah knew. It was all true. But this was only the beginning. That text message didn't just break their marriage, it set off a chain reaction that no one could have predicted. Betrayal, revenge, courtroom drama, it all stemmed from those few words typed carelessly into a phone. What came next would shock the city even more than the message itself. And that's exactly where the story takes us next. The silence in the room didn't last long. Daniel stuttered, searching for words, but nothing he said could erase the truth. Sarah's heart was pounding in her chest, not just from betrayal, but from the realization that she was no longer the only one who knew. The city already had its eyes on them. By morning, whispers had become shouts, and private humiliation turned into a public scandal. The text was everywhere. Screenshots shared in group chats, social media feeds buzzing, and neighbors gossiping behind closed doors. What was once their private marriage now belonged to the entire city's curiosity. Sarah could barely breathe. She hadn't even processed her own pain, and yet people she barely knew were already forming opinions about her life. Friends avoided her, some pitied her, others judged her. But the most crushing blow was realizing just how many people Daniel had fooled. He wasn't just her husband. He was a respected businessman, a man who built his reputation on trust, honesty, and loyalty. That reputation was now in ashes because of a single text. But Sarah wasn't going to stay silent. She decided that if Daniel wanted to play games in the shadows, then she would drag everything into the light. She contacted a lawyer, not just to talk about divorce, but to talk about justice. The lawyer told her something shocking. The text message, that tiny piece of digital proof, could become the foundation of her entire case. In the courtroom, words weren't just words. They were evidence. And evidence was power. Meanwhile, Daniel was scrambling. He begged, pleaded, and even tried to convince Sarah that the message wasn't what it seemed. But every lie he told only made things worse. Because by now, more texts had surfaced. More screenshots were being passed around. And soon, it wasn't just about one mistake. It was about an entire pattern of betrayal. People who once admired him now wanted nothing to do with him. Business partners pulled away, investors stepped back, and his empire, the one he had worked years to build, started to collapse under the weight of scandal. Sarah sat in her lawyer's office, holding back tears, but also feeling a strange kind of strength. "Do you want to move forward?" the lawyer asked her. She nodded without hesitation. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she had control. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was ready to fight back. As the first court date approached, the tension in the city grew heavier. Reporters gathered outside the courthouse. People who had never cared about legal proceedings were suddenly obsessed. It wasn't just about Sarah and Daniel anymore. It was about trust, betrayal, and the painful reminder that no secret stays hidden forever. But what no one knew yet was that the courtroom would reveal even more than that first text. Because sometimes one secret is only the beginning of many. And when the judge opened those files, what came out next would shake the entire city even harder. The courtroom was filled to the brim, every seat taken, the air heavy with anticipation. Sarah walked in quietly, her lawyer by her side, while Daniel sat at the defendant's table, his once confident posture now stiff and nervous. The buzz of reporters outside echoed through the walls, cameras flashing whenever the doors opened. This wasn't just a divorce hearing anymore. It had become a spectacle, one that the entire city seemed desperate to witness. The judge entered, and the chatter stopped instantly. With a firm voice, the proceedings began. Sarah's lawyer wasted no time. "Your Honor," he said, "this case begins with one simple piece of evidence." He held up a printed copy of the text message, the very one that had sparked everything. The courtroom leaned in, as though the words on that page carried the weight of dynamite. The message was read aloud. Gasps erupted across the room. People already knew about the text, but hearing it spoken in the solemn silence of a courtroom made it feel even more real, more final. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she held her chin high. She wanted Daniel to see that she wasn't broken. She was stronger than the lies he built. Daniel's lawyer tried to argue. He claimed the message was taken out of context, that Sarah was misinterpreting it. But just as he began his defense, Sarah's lawyer dropped another blow. "We have more, Your Honor." He pulled out a folder filled with pages of conversations, messages Daniel thought had been deleted but had been retrieved. These weren't just harmless words. They were proof of months of deception, late-night meetings, and secret promises made to someone else. The room fell silent again, but this silence was different. It wasn't shock, it was judgment. People stared at Daniel with cold eyes, the image of the honest businessman shattered in front of everyone. Sarah's lawyer leaned closer to the judge. "This is not just about betrayal, Your Honor. It's about truth." It's about a woman who trusted her husband with her life, only to find out that he lived a double life. Daniel's hands trembled. He tried to speak, but the judge silenced him. "You will have your chance," the judge said sternly, but even he couldn't hide the weight in his voice. Sarah sat quietly, her heart pounding, realizing that this wasn't just about her anymore. Her pain had turned into a lesson for everyone watching. Secrets have consequences, and the truth, no matter how deeply buried, always has a way of surfacing. Outside the courthouse, people waited impatiently for news. Inside, the case had only just begun, but already the city knew this wasn't going to be a simple trial. It was going to be a reckoning. And what came next, after the judge spoke his words, would leave the entire courtroom frozen in silence, unable to forget what they had just heard. The judge adjusted his glasses, his gaze sweeping across the room. The weight of silence was unbearable, like the city itself was holding its breath. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, but Sarah sat still, her hands folded tightly in her lap. What the judge said next would not only decide the case, but would forever mark this moment in history. "Mr. Daniel," the judge began, his tone steady and deliberate, "what this court has witnessed is more than a broken marriage. It is the breaking of trust, the betrayal of vows, and the destruction of integrity. Marriage is not a contract to be twisted at convenience. It is a promise." The courtroom was still as stone. Even the clicking of the reporters' cameras seemed to pause, waiting. The judge lifted the copy of the infamous text message. This one single message was enough to expose an entire web of lies. Words once spoken or written can never be taken back. And in your case, Mr. Daniel, they revealed who you truly are. This court cannot ignore that Daniel's face was pale. He tried to protest, but his voice broke before the words could form. The judge turned his gaze towards Sarah. "Mrs. Sarah, you stood here today with courage, and the truth you carried will serve as an example, not just to this court, but to every person who believes they can bury their lies. You are free from this burden, and this court rules in your favor." Gasps filled the air once more. The verdict was final. Daniel's world collapsed in front of him, while Sarah, though shaken, felt a sense of release wash over her. She hadn't just won a case, she had reclaimed her life. The judge's voice lowered, but his words struck deeper than ever before. "Let this be remembered. Lies can build a kingdom, but only truth can bring justice. And sometimes it takes just one message to expose everything." With that, his gavel struck, echoing like thunder. The court dissolved into whispers and tears. Some cried for Sarah's strength, others shook their heads at Daniel's downfall, but no one would forget what they had witnessed. As Sarah walked out of the courtroom, cameras flashed wildly, reporters shouting her name. Yet she didn't speak. She didn't need to. The truth had spoken for her. And for the people watching around the world, the story was more than just gossip. It was a warning, a reminder that the choices we make in the shadows eventually find their way into the light. If you've been with me until this powerful ending, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more stories like this every day. Because sometimes the truth is stranger and stronger than fiction. And remember this, the world may forgive mistakes, but it never forgets the truth.